feel like people just don't love in the same way. Someone makes one mistake and then the other person's out. If you don't do the work on yourself, you will constantly come up against the same challenges. It will just appear in different ways.
How do you stop that long-term partner relationship becoming a relationship that's more like being with a roommate?
It's a lot of hard work. My grand refused to take that ring off, even when she was on her deathbed. When I think about love, that is what it's about. For so many people, what's more important is the image of being in a happy relationship rather than actually being in a happy relationship.
What do you think are the secrets to that long-lasting marriage? Hello, Charlene. Welcome.
Hello, thank you. Thanks for having me.
Well, thank you for coming. I'm super excited to talk about relationships. Obviously, understanding that your background is in relationships, love, intimacy,
Yeah.
and care home CEO, talking with yourself. Some people must think, where's the connection? But then I was thinking back and reflecting on my 24 years in care and all of the people that I've had the absolute privilege of meeting, the stories that they've told, the experiences, the wisdom that they've shared. And one common theme that I always saw was the impact of their relationships in their lives and navigating the complexities of lives because of those relationships. I've met people who've been married for 50 years, 60 years, and even 70 years. What do you think are the secrets to that and that long-lasting, like 70-year marriage?
Yeah, I think having spoken to quite a few couples that are in the sort of the later stages of their life, I think one thing that they always say is that it's about sort of picking your, I suppose they call it like picking the arguments, when you kind of let things go, when it's important to talk things through, and ultimately being with someone that's on the same page as you, that kind of has the same mentality about life in terms of we are in this together. And I think, you probably would agree that in today's times, I think a lot of us kind of give up quite easily as well. Someone blinks the wrong way and we're like, okay, we're out of there. I think the older generation, they kind of work at it a little bit more.
Absolutely. Why do you think that is?
I mean, there's a number of reasons. I think dating apps probably don't help. I think the fact that it feels like there's so much choice out there. So you'll be in a relationship with somebody, and they, as I said, they can blink the wrong way, or they're not quite listening, or they're going on and on about something. And the older generation, I think they would like work it through a little bit because they can see other deeper qualities. But I think that in this generation, it's like, oh no, I'll just look for someone else.
Yeah.
Surely that person's not going to stress me out. But of course, we know that you'll go to another person, it'll be just something else because the common denominator is you.
Yeah, absolutely. And you spoke as well about those arguments and
Mm,
picking the times when you do have an argument or those times when you leave it.
yeah.
How do you make that decision on which ones are the ones too?
Yeah, I think the more you know yourself and the more you know your person, the more you'll work out like, is this something that does need to be explored a little bit further? Or is this something that can kind of wait? Or is this something that I can kind of work through myself? And I think for a lot of people, they don't know themselves enough. So they're often triggered. They don't acknowledge or recognize that they're triggered. And then they just like run into that trigger as opposed to taking a breather, allowing their body to calm down and then talking it through.
Yes. Yeah. Makes complete sense.
Mm.
Makes complete sense to me because that happened this week.
Oh, did it?
It did indeed.
Yes. Would you like to say more?
I had that moment of it's such a small thing. It wasn't so much small to me, but it was such a small thing in the grand scheme.
Yeah.
Do I say something? Do I not?
Yeah.
I decided to say it. It didn't go down well.
Right. That's the thing. I think if you're really triggered, it's hard to kind of be calm and to share something in a way that's going to land without it kind of being explosive. But people don't often give themselves that space to take a breather and to calm down before they speak to their partner about something.
That's great advice. Every couple faces hard times.
Hmm.
Life is challenging.
Yeah.
What is it that separates those that get through those challenges and last the decades to those that don't?
Yeah, it's a good question. I don't know. I suppose the hopeless romantic in me would want to say that there are some people that are just meant to be together, and so they work through things. They understand the importance of partnership, of being in it together. Um, and I think there are some people that are constantly looking for something that probably just doesn't exist. And I think it kind of goes back to, I know this is going to sound like a classic therapist in terms of what I'm going to say next, but I feel like if you don't do the work on yourself, you will
Mhm.
constantly come up against the same challenges. It will just appear in different ways. I think for so many people, they just want to avoid doing the work on themselves. They don't want to hold the mirror up and see some of those skeletons. Like, why would you? You want to kind of keep it all fun and light and bubbly and happy, but actually, unless you deal with some of those issues, they'll just keep coming back until you give it the attention that it needs.
As I said to you earlier, I'm an oversharer.
That's okay.
But
I love that.
I've thought a lot about this,
Yeah.
and it's certainly in my 20s. The
Mm.
idea was that I was always searching for a relationship, but that relationship was to satisfy something that I needed to actually satisfy myself.
Right.
And it wasn't until I was happy with myself that I found the relationship that there was a right one to be in.
Yeah, I think that's often the case, isn't it? It's like we think that we can find the answer in someone else. But I always say to people that, when you say that you want a partner that's going to love you, you have to ask yourself, like, do you love yourself?
Yes.
Like, do you treat yourself in a way that you expect a partner to treat you? And oftentimes the answer is no. But it sounds like a bit of a cliche to say you gotta love yourself before you before you love other people, before other people love you. But you do have to do the work on yourself. And I think that's why for so many people they get into relationships and they lose themselves. They don't even know who they are anymore. And when they break up, it's like who am I? Who is Charlene Douglas? Well, I know who I am, but
Oh, go on. Who is Charlene Douglas?
good question. Yeah, it's a really good question actually. Who is Charlene Douglas? I think I'm somebody who, when I was younger, I used to call myself quite a rebel. So, for example, if I was talking in lessons and then the teacher walked in, my friend would stop talking because like, oh my gosh, the teacher's here. I'd make a point of keep talking or of continue to talk because I'd be like, I just don't want to follow rules. But then I worked through that, and I'm not so rebellious now. But I would consider myself to be someone that really cares about other people. Um, people call me kind, warm, etc. But I think even as a therapist, it's so important for me to create a space where people feel like they can just tell me anything. Um, so yeah, so I think I'm all of those things: kind, caring, loving, all of those.
You can feel the kind, caring, and loving is coming out of you. Really is.
Ah,
Is love more about passion or partnership in terms of longevity and being together?
well, I think a bit of both is required. I think for most people, they can acknowledge that during those sort of early stages, those sort of the honeymoon phase, that passion is very much there. It's very important. It keeps it alive. But I think ultimately partnership is kind of what sustains the relationship. You've spoken about working with older people, and I remember I remember going to the hospital and my late grand now, but when she was in hospital, I remember going to the hospital and just looking at all the other people on the ward, and most of them were her age. I remember thinking, what's most important here isn't how tall your husband is, or your girlfriend, or like how blue their eyes are, or whatever it may be. It really is about someone that's kind and caring, someone that looks after you, someone that allows you to be dignified even when you're going through when your body isn't doing what you want it to do. Somebody that shows up for you like every day and advocates for you. They'll go to the doctors and the nurses to make sure that you're being well looked after. They will speak to family and friends to make sure you've got enough visitors. Like, those are qualities that are really important, aren't they? And I think, to I often talk about Married at First Sight, obviously a show that I'm on, and a lot of the couples will talk about, well, he's not my type, he's not tall enough, he's not what's a classic one? So height is obviously the main one, right? Or like, I want someone with tattoos. You kind of get all those kind of preferences. But ultimately those things don't really matter.
No, no, not
They
at
really
all.
don't.
Yeah.
And when you're in need and you've got a partner that's really there for you, that's when like, this matters. It doesn't really matter if they've got blonde hair, blue eyes or not. Although blonde hair and blue eyes is gorgeous, of course. I just realised as you sat in front of me, I was like, it does matter sometimes.
I couldn't be more spot on. When I think about
Mm,
some of the couples that I've met living in some of the homes,
mm,
there's one couple that springs to mind that I must have been around 18.
mm.
And they were actually, when I think back, they remind me of my grandparents as well,
Right.
in that they were passionate, they were fiery, But they could easily annoy each other, but at
Yeah.
the same time, when it really came to it, they couldn't have been more dedicated to each other.
Right.
They couldn't have cared more for each other,
Yeah.
um, and where there was the lady, unfortunately, was physically more unable.
Mm.
Her husband was physically more able, and would do everything for her, but
Yeah.
would also do it whilst walking away, muttering under his
Yeah.
breath. And it was an amazing thing to see.
Yeah, yeah. Do you know what, those sort of, I mean, just hearing you say that just really warms my heart because I'm reminded of like older couples where they have this kind of routine where like maybe one partner will always make a cup of tea for the other partner and they'll have a routine of watching Married at First Sight every night. I was gonna say EastEnders like that. No, Married at First Sight. No, but yeah, they have a routine of watching a particular show every night together and and it's always particularly sad when one passes away because they, particularly if they've been married for like 50, 60 years, you can only
Yeah.
imagine how difficult that must be. But to have something so special feels a bit rare in today's times, doesn't it? To
It
kind of
does
have that kind of
indeed,
partnership.
which is why I suppose we're having this conversation, because
Yeah,
there are still people out there, of course, myself included, that want that long-term relationship, that
yeah,
long-term marriage.
yeah. And it's interesting, isn't it? Because I feel like there's a lot of people that want it, but I don't know if there's a lot of people that kind of know how to have it. And that might be because we haven't seen that growing up. Like our parents haven't demonstrated that, or our grandparents haven't demonstrated it in a way that is attractive or even accurate or correct for us. And so there's a longing for it, but sometimes we don't always know how to do it.
Which I suppose why we need people like you.
Yes. I'll say, well, there's no rule book as such, is there? But
No.
yeah, I suppose it's just accessing therapists and
Yeah.
experts and so forth. But you think about like driving, for example, you learn to drive, you have a driving instructor, they then introduce a theory. You can tell how old I am. They then introduce the theory test. And I think younger people will be like, no, the theory test has been out there forever. But I'm like, no, I remember being younger where there was no theory test at all. But yeah, they teach you how to drive. And then once you're capable, you can go off and drive. When it comes to relationships, and then you're sort of thrust into the adult world and you're told to kind of get on with it. And there you go. Go and meet someone, make a relationship work. It's hard work.
In the older generation,
Yeah.
we do see much more of marriages that last a lot longer.
Mm.
Um,
Mhm.
what influences do you think happened whereby people now struggle
Yeah.
to find that longer term relationship?
Yeah, I think what's really interesting though when it comes to longer term relationships is we have to look at the quality of the relationship. And the reason why I say this is because I remember sort of both statuses, being single and being in a relationship. And the amount of people that when I would say to them that I'm single, they would sort of look at you like, oh, don't worry, you'll find someone. Like I wanted to find someone. Don't worry, someone will choose you. And then when I was in a relationship, it was like, oh, great. No question around the quality of the relationship.
Mhm.
Is this person treating you well? Are you happy? It just ticked a box of, oh, you're in a relationship. Good. Okay. So I think one thing we need to have a look at when we're looking at relationships where people been together forever is that are we talking about a quality, happy relationship or are we talking about they're just in a relationship? But if we're talking about a quality relationship, I think that, mutual respect, mutual love, being able to communicate well, emotional intelligence, being able to trust your partner supporting you, protecting you, or you protecting each other. All those things are really important for a kind of healthy relationship. But I think for me, one of the biggest things is kind of accountability.
Yes.
And I think if you can't take accountability for situation, things that arise in the relationship, if you can't say sorry, I mean, the amount of, I'd say, men that I've worked with where they've struggled with the word sorry, because in their mind they're not wrong. Um, the word sorry can just do amazing things for a relationship. I mean, you need to mean it. Like, you don't want to
Yes.
just, you don't want to just say it for the sake of shutting people down. But if you can really acknowledge, what, I didn't make the right choice here, and I'm really sorry that that's hurt you. I will reflect on kind of what I can do differently so this doesn't happen again. I mean, that just changes the whole dynamic of a relationship.
I suppose it's the acknowledgement as well, isn't it, of validation of that person's feelings in that situation.
Yes. Yeah, that's exactly what it is. Because I think about when you're sharing with your partner how you feel and they sort of dismiss it or they sort of put you down or they tell you you're over emotional. What does that do to you then? Where does that send you? Where do you go from there really?
Yeah.
It's kind of like you're shut down. a message is really clear there that what you're saying isn't important. Um, and then that sends some very mixed messages in terms of the person that says, I love you, but I don't really care about your feelings.
Yes.
Not nice.
Doesn't make sense at all.
Doesn't make sense
No.
at all. No. They don't go hand in hand. I think that's the thing.
Coming back to what you were saying as well, obviously, there's many people out there that aren't looking for a longer term relationship, and it's about their finding their well-being and happiness within that too.
Yeah.
And I often think back, and I thought I'd take the opportunity because this lady that I like to talk about quite often, I always say that if we were the same age, we'd have been best friends.
Yeah.
And she was absolute unique character, very, very forceful in what she wanted and what she liked. Every year I used to have to sit and write Christmas cards for her friends. And she had hundreds of friends. If the letter S wasn't quite right, I'd have to rewrite that card. We would go shopping together. So anytime I'd have free time, we'd go out to John Lewis because she loved clothes. It's a side point, but I say she lost herself. I lost her. She was in her electric wheelchair. Off she goes. I was running around the store frantically, thinking I'd lost a lady. She's there trying on clothes with one of the shop assistants. Absolutely. The security guards, I was going to put a message out on the tannoy.
Yeah, that is a scene from a movie, surely.
She shared a lot with me. I know she absolutely wouldn't mind me sharing this story. That she fell in love at a young age. I always loved the story she told me that she was in a car with her beau, and the car was a bit steamy, and a police officer knocked on the window. And this was probably going back to like maybe the 30s, 40s
wow.
kind of era.
Yeah.
And they fell absolutely madly in love with each other. And he was the love of her life. And sadly, he passed away when she was young. And actually, that he remained the love of her life. And she made the decision that was her. For the rest of her life, she was this fierce, independent woman that had absolutely been touched by that relationship. And because of that, again, I share these stories because, I mean, you can clearly tell I remember them so well because she had such a profound impact on me through that.
Yeah, I think that's the thing, isn't it? It kind of feels like in today's times, I don't know, I feel like people just don't love in the same way. Like I think about my grandparents, like classic story, my grandma, or my gran, I don't know why I said ma because I don't call her grandma. My gran. So my granddad passed away sort of like 20 years ago, and then my gran passed away about 5 years ago, and she continued to wear her wedding ring throughout the whole time. Even when he passed away, she refused to take that ring off.
Yeah.
And even when she was on her deathbed, she refused to take that ring off, to the extent where a day before she died, I went to see her and her hands were like sort of out, and I touched her hand. I think she thought I was going to take her ring off. So she moved her hand. And I mean, it made me cry at the time because I'm just like, the love was so deep that even that, because her fingers were sort of started to swell up as well.
Yeah.
So, it's like, I don't know how comfortable it was for her to even have this ring on, but she refused to take that ring off. And for me, when I think about like love, like that is what it's about. Like that was 15 years later, she was not taking that ring off. So yeah, there's something special, but I think about that kind of older love, and also like Married at First Sight. Like when you listen to like some of the what we call them contributors, so they're brides and grooms,
Yes.
when they talk about love, they often say, I want to have love like my parents had love, they're still together after 30, 40 years. But there's just something that's changed in this generation, I think, when it comes to real love. People just don't stay together very long, and yeah, someone makes one mistake and then the other person's out. It's times have really changed.
I hope through us meeting today, us talking about it and all of the other work that you do, hopefully that will help change that as well so that people can find that true love.
I hope so.
Charlene, if you could design the perfect partner, what would that look like?
Hello, Cool J.
LL Cool J.
He will look exactly like him. No, okay. So good question. So I think it's funny actually because I think when you're younger, you would choose something very different. So I think when I was younger, I probably would just choose LL Cool J. He wouldn't even need to speak. It would just be like based on looks. For me, that would be the love of my life. But I think as you get older, you realise that those things are not as important. Obviously, physical attraction is key. I
Yes.
think for a lot of people. But I think, as I said a little bit earlier, I think it's all those kind of loyalty, kindness, reliability, I think someone who's emotionally intelligent, I now know is so important. I think for myself as a therapist as well, where communication is key, when you're with someone who isn't emotionally aware or isn't very emotionally intelligent, it's a lot of hard work.
Yes.
It's a lot of hard
Yeah,
work.
absolutely.
So, so yeah, so emotional intelligence, physical attraction is obviously really key. Someone who can communicate well, and someone that's done the work on themselves. I think that's the key.
What's a clear sign that a relationship isn't worth fighting for anymore?
I think when the respect has gone, I think when you have a partner who doesn't care whether they hurt your feelings anymore, they don't care whether you're crying yourself to sleep, they're not willing to work on it. I think it's at that point that you realize that actually I need to not fight for this anymore. I think one thing that people forget is that if you choose the, let's say, wrong partner, a partner who doesn't care about you, a partner that puts you down, criticizes you, doesn't bring out the best in you, that can really severely affect your mental and physical health. And I think people underestimate the power of that. So when you're choosing someone, it's not just like, hey, I'm going to choose someone because, they look amazing. You really have to think about who this person is. Like, do they have integrity? Yeah, you need to protect your mental health.
Why do you think people stay in those relationships perhaps longer than they should?
That's an interesting question. I think there's a number of reasons. I mean, I think for some people they choose partners that allows them to sort of heal a childhood wound. So, for example, it could be that let's say you've got a male partner, and that male partner is similar to your dad, and they both sort of display signs of maybe putting you down or being aggressive. As a child, you might think, I can't change this, I can't control this, I just have to feel this hurt and this pain. But as an adult, we can feel like, hey, we can make a difference here. We can really love this person and they won't be like that, right? Or we can argue back with them and help them to understand our point of view. But oftentimes when that's the reason that you're still in a relationship, it's hard for that relationship to be um for you to sustain that relationship because the reasons that you're in it aren't healthy.
Yeah.
Sometimes people are afraid of being alone. I think that's a big one. There's a lot of stigma, isn't there, around being single, and you're more accepted in society if you're in a relationship. So I think for a lot of people, they want that image. I know with well, I don't want to say a lot of couples that I work with. I'll say a few couples that I work with that they could be in the worst place ever. They could be, one partner could be crying themselves to sleep every night. The other partner could be absolutely disrespectful, not willing to make any changes. And then on their social media, it's like Romeo and Juliet. You'd never know that they're in the worst place ever. And I'm not saying that you shouldn't kind of highlight great, something great that's happened in
Yes.
your relationship and put it on social media. But I think for so many people, what's more important is the image of being in a happy relationship rather than actually being in a happy relationship.
What would be your advice to those people who find themselves in that cycle almost of going from one relationship to the next that perhaps isn't the most healthy?
I think take a breather, take a step, maybe access some professional help to kind of work out what's going on there. I think if you're the kind of person that cannot be by yourself, if you have to be in a relationship, you have to kind of look at what that's about, because the reality is that we're born alone and we die alone. So there's going to come a point where, you have to be by yourself. And I think you have to learn how to be okay by yourself. Otherwise, when you do get into a relationship, you lose yourself
Yeah.
because you become, you merge with the other person, and you do a thing that they want you to do, and you don't really quite know who you are. So it's important to be able to be with yourself, and to enjoy that.
This is a great question and one that I'll be taking on board.
Okay.
How do you stop that long-term partner relationship becoming a relationship that's more like being with a roommate?
You have to be very intentional in relationships and put work and effort into it. And I say this because I know it kind of sounds like the standard thing to say, right? Like you'd expect that, I suppose anyone would say that. But the amount of people that just rely on the fact that they are just together, they just love each other, they're attracted to each other, they're already committed to each other. So they just exist together and then not realize that X number of years down the line, there's no attraction there really, or they're getting fed up with each other, or they behave just like roommates. You have to put that effort in. So I always say to people, I know that this sounds super unsexy, but if you think about like the workplace, right? you have like maybe a meeting with your manager once a week, once a fortnight, once a month. You might have a team meeting. You will look at the actions from the last meeting and you'll work out who's going to do what. Like, how can we make this better? And then the idea is that over a period of, let's say, a year, you've had so many meetings, you've reflected on the work of who's doing what, you've reflected on what's done well and what hasn't. So the idea is that the company goes from A to B, right?
Yes.
It makes more money, it's more productive. We don't really see relationships in the same way. But I do think that when it comes to relationships, you do have to kind of be more intentional about spending time with each other, and kind of reminding yourself like why you're together again. Like, so many couples forget to just be playful and how to flirt. I remember working with a couple recently and they were like, how do we even flirt with each other, Charlotte? I don't even know how to do that anymore. And they've lost that, playfulness, flirting, date nights, really, really important. All those things kind of keep the relationship going, keep it fun and alive.
I suppose it comes back to the passion and partnership question, doesn't it?
Right.
In that when you're first in that relationship, there's lots of passion there, and you expect that to carry you through
Yeah.
without actually recognizing that there is a time to sit and have a conversation and recognize the evolution of the relationship.
Yeah, and also as well, you want to make sure that the relationship is fun, right? Because that's what keeps you engaged. So life is still going to throw eggs at you, like this is life, right? So, but you want to be able to do it with your partner and have moments where you have like fun, playful times together. And I think for so many people, they get bogged down with life, finances, health,
Yes.
parents not being very well, all of that stuff, kind of the what life just naturally throws at us. And then they think, well, like, how do we navigate being playful and fun? Well, it is your responsibility when you're in a relationship to kind of create spaces where you can have fun with each other, experiences, things that you've never done before, or if you're quite competitive, like doing like a competitive sport with one another, or, it's kind of like finding things like that to do to just keep it exciting.
It's interesting. There's a chap called Des, and he lives in one of our the Tangled homes at the moment. And he was asked recently, as part of he's got quite the following on Instagram, around keeping that passion alive and the partnership.
Yeah.
And his advice was that always include your loved one in all of your new hobbies, which aligns with what you're saying, and doing
Yes.
things together.
That's a really, really good idea. I think the thing is, it's not to say you can't have an individual life
Yeah.
at all, because that's also important, right? But it's just finding things that you can do together, that you can discover together. That helps to build like emotional intimacy. And I think that's what's lost for a lot of people because they just exist together and they allow themselves to get bogged down by life.
Yeah. What I was referring to earlier. So I'm very, very OCD.
Yeah.
And I don't expect Jerome to be the same,
Really?
not to the same level. However,
Yes.
I said to him on Monday, I think it was, I'm going away for the week for work. Obviously, it's really important. We've got the podcast Friday.
Yeah.
Can you just keep it this way? Not do anything else. Just keep it this
Yeah,
way.
just maintain it.
Yeah, just maintain it. And I was supposed to be back Thursday night, but I ended up coming back Wednesday. And to be fair, it wasn't bad.
Yeah.
But at the same time, yesterday was a bit grisly as I was doing things that weren't kept that way. I
Yeah.
was.
Yeah.
And I said to myself, should I say something? No,
Mm.
no, no, no. Don't say anything. It doesn't matter. In the grand scheme, it doesn't matter. I think he just walked in. Well, it's a good home. It's a good job that I didn't come home tonight, isn't it?
Just
he
came
said,
out.
he said, why? Well, because if I had have done it, I'd have had a very stressful evening sorting the house out. Well, yes, explosive.
Yeah. It's you tried though. That's the main thing. You
I
did
tried
try.
not to say something.
Yeah. It's funny because there it sounds like, like the angel and the devil on the shoulder.
Mhm.
The angel saying like, don't say anything, it's fine, you don't need to say anything. But devil's like, no, I'm gonna say it right now because this is annoying me. Yeah, yeah, yeah. It's hard with conflict though, isn't it? Because I think with conflict you have to kind of work out what's going on there for you as the individual. Like, is it a desire to maintain control? Is it that you're feeling disrespected? Is it that you don't feel listened to? Like, you have to kind of like dig deeper into kind of what is going on there, what is triggering me, what is not allowing me to not say anything right now.
Yes.
Um and I think that's really important to kind of understand where it's come from. I would say when it comes to conflict management, this is probably the skill sets that we're not taught, sorry, growing up. And because of that, we don't quite know how to do it. So we go into that fight flight mode, which is I'm feeling really triggered. this feels quite threatening to me. I'm going to argue back, the kind of the fighting part, or this is getting on my nerves. I'm going to walk away and slam the door so that they know that I'm really upset. But either one of those states really is about, I'm just feeling this is overwhelming right now and it's an emotional response. So this is why when people are arguing, I always say, like, if you're arguing with your partner and they're arguing back, you're arguing and they're arguing, yeah, like you're not going to get anywhere because you've already lost control. You both have. And so what you think is going to happen in the moment is that you think that when you're arguing, you're going to say something that's going to make them say, "Oh yeah, you're right." Never happens.
A great world.
Right, you know? And like if you think about the times that you've had arguments with people, it's probably close to zero in terms of the amount of times that they've said, actually, you've got a point mid-argument. It's not going to happen. So one of you has to kind of diffuse it by just taking yourself away from it.
Mhm.
And when you do that, yes, the other person might be a bit frustrated because they haven't finished getting their point across. But until you're both in a place where you are calm, that's when the left part of your brain can really kick in. The logical, rational part of your brain can kick in. And then you can be calm and have conversations like this. I always talk about this like couple versus the problem kind of mentality as opposed to couple one versus couple two in the boxing ring to ting, like, you know, like next round. You want to do it where it's the couple versus the actual problem.
How do you think that's best achieved?
So, first of all, you need to be calm. That goes without saying.
Yeah.
So I think that's really important. I think that is important to process that if you aren't in a calm, relaxed space, then nothing's really going to get resolved. You're going to just be triggered, right? So being calm is really key. The right setting, the right environment is also very important. The reason why I say that, so to go back to your example, partner comes home from work, that may not be the time.
It definitely
We
wasn't.
won't tell him that. Though. But that may not be the time to share something that is probably going to be triggering for both of you, because it sounds like he knows your tone of voice, so he knew that you were kind of accusing him of not doing
Mhm.
something, so already he's going to be in that kind of defensive space. So nothing's going to be resolved in that space because you're both quite heightened. So timing and setting is really key. So for example, it's a date night. The setting is as beautiful as this, let's say, right? So you've got the fire, the fireplace, you've got the lovely candles, maybe. I'm not saying you have to have this kind of setting for every discussion, but acknowledging the importance of the setting being right is key. There's something called fact, feel, need that I often share with couples. And I always also say to them, you can do this fact, feel, need back to back. So the power of being back to back with your partner means that you don't get to see their face expressions when you're talking. So for example, if you're saying something that's going to annoy your partner, you won't see it, they're frowning or rolling up their eyes, which then means that you can just share what you're feeling. The idea then with fact, feel, need is it's a bit more of a structured way to manage conflict. So you stick with the facts, you share with them how it made you feel, and then you say what you need moving forward. And then you do couple versus a problem.
Really interesting. And again, some advice I'll be taking on, I believe.
Yeah. Yeah.
Why is staying together for the kids one of the worst things you can do?
So I've been asked this question in the past, and I always say to people, think about adults that you know whose parents stay together for the sake of them and ask them what that experience was like and what they would have preferred. And I think if you grew up in a household where parents were displaying toxic behaviors, let's say that, um, you know that your preference would probably have been for them to have lived separately, even if it meant that they had new partners, if it meant that you would then have peace and be in a calm environment. So I think I understand why people would say, let's stay together for the sake of the children. But if you're staying together for the sake of the children and you're working on yourself and each other and the relationship,
Yes.
then great. But if you're displaying toxic behaviors, arguing, screaming at the middle of the night, throwing things around the house, the police are being called, accusing each other of whatever in front of the children, then actually that's quite damaging for the child. It's damaging for their nervous system, but also just in terms of their emotional development.
I suppose the huge knock-on effect is, of course, and that the relationships of that child and how they can evolve in their future as they grow.
Absolutely, because that's the template, you know, so it will affect them in some way. So either it could be that they become hyper independent, so they don't rely on anyone anymore, because why would they? That's, you know, they've seen a relationship where relying on each other hasn't been great. Or they develop some other kind of situation where they don't know how to communicate, don't know how to manage conflict, they get really angry really quickly, or they shut down, you know, so they enter into adult life, have a new partner, the partner says something simple like, let's talk about this, and they just shut down
Yeah.
because conflict hasn't felt safe for them growing up. So it does have a real impact on them. And actually, sometimes the best thing you can do is split up and allow your children to be in a healthy, emotionally safe space.
When kids leave home, how do the strongest couples keep the spark alive during the empty nest years?
Yeah, I think it's like you have to kind of start again, because the reality is that if you've had 16, 18 years where your focus has really just been the children, it's so easy to lose sight of your actual relationship. So it's kind of like you have to sort of press reset and get to know each other again and go on date nights, communicate about what you want this next stage of your life to look like, but also acknowledge the loneliness that you might be feeling, or the sadness, you know, because you now miss your children. And I think that's really important to address. I think with any emotion, it's important to address it. If you feel it, it needs to be addressed. I think for so many people, they feel embarrassed to feel a particular way, but you know, if your children have been with you for X number of years, of course the house is going to feel really quiet. You know, now you need to kind of reset and rebuild your relationship with your partner, which can be quite a task.
What do you think it is? Because I think there's a theme we've been talking around communication or the lack of communication. What do you feel the fear is, or what holds us back from communicating in our relationships?
I think we worry about the response that we might receive from a partner. So interestingly, when I work with couples and when I work with, let's say, heterosexual, mature couples, what I usually get is that the woman has encouraged the guy to come along to therapy. So he doesn't really want to be there,
Yeah.
right? So he's only there because she said we're going to get a divorce otherwise. Um, and then what would usually happen is that the woman would say to me, "Oh, he doesn't really talk much. You know, you can't get anything out of him." And I'm always curious about that because I think, sometimes these guys are in like top jobs or they work on construction sites where you have to talk. So then in my mind, I'm then thinking, well, what is it about this relationship that has meant that this guy doesn't feel comfortable speaking or doesn't speak much. And then without fail, 2 or 3 sessions in, you can't get the guy to stop talking, right? Because, and so for me, it then communicates that actually, if the environment feels safe enough, then people do open up. It's like with children, like, you know, if you want to get the best out of a child, and I always say this, I've got a niece who's 2, nearly going on 3, well, nearly going on 30, but nearly going on 3. And the environment that's been created for her at home with her mum and dad and when she's with me is one where she can be her full self. She'll tell you what she's feeling, if she's happy or not. She'll say if she's feeling sad or she'll act it out. But she's got a safe environment so she can communicate all of that. It's not shut down, it's not dismissed, it's acknowledged. If you can create a space for your partner so that they feel able to talk to you, then hopefully they will. But you have to be careful of like your non-verbal communication in particular, right? If your partner's saying something that gets on your nerves, you know, are you frowning? Are you rolling up your eyes? Are you like waiting for them to finish talking so that you can tell them that they're wrong? All of that kind of disrupts communication.
Of course it does. Yeah.
Yeah.
If somebody's communicating with you, that person's pulling a face, you're not going to want to communicate those feelings again, are you?
You don't. And I think for in therapy, what usually works is that when you're sharing how you feel, we are actively listening and we aren't judging. Well, good therapists don't judge, right? But we are on the journey with you. We want you to work this out. And oftentimes clients feel that, and so and so as a result, they're more able to talk about how they're feeling.
What's the best relationship advice you've ever had or received?
Hmm. I remember years ago someone saying to me that if someone really loves you, they will care about how they've made you feel. And that really stayed with me. Um, and this was many years ago. Actually, probably about 10 years ago, when I was in a very toxic relationship with a guy who I will not mention his name, but he uh, was just quite emotionally abusive. And I remember a time where I was quite tearful, and he pretty much stepped over me to go to work and didn't contact me for the rest of the day. And that was really strange for me because I grew up in a household where there was a lot of love. And so if someone had hurt somebody, like you just couldn't just go to work and not be bothered about it. Like, it would bother you. Like, if my sister is hurt, I lose sleep over it. Like, I want to resolve it. It makes me feel uncomfortable. But he got to a stage, or we got to a stage, where he was so disrespectful that he could do that and just get on with his life. And I remember that advice really stayed with me, that, if he really loved me, he would care about how his behavior and his actions were making me feel. And that was enough for me to walk away.
Thanks for sharing that.
That's
Really
all right.
grateful.
Yeah.
So you walked away from that advice and yeah, his beautiful advice.
Yeah.
How then did you move past that? Where did you get that strength from to then be Charlene again?
Yeah, it took some time, and I'm quite an impatient person, so I was expecting 6 months later that I should be over that. But it definitely took some time to kind of piece myself back together. I'd like to say that I think it's about a year later I received a call to be on TV, and I think that kind of made me sort of think, actually, there's so much more to who I am as a person. The validation from others, the feedback from others was really helpful. I did a lot of therapy, lots and lots of therapy. Um, really learnt about myself. I had to really reflect on, like, who I was choosing as a partner and why I was choosing that person as a partner. I had to be okay with being single. Um, yeah, so I think there's a lot of work that I had to do on myself, and lots of demons that I didn't want to face. Um, but yeah, now I feel stronger. Now I feel like more um able to be by myself, but also in a relationship able to kind of articulate what I need.
Yes.
And I think that I wasn't always able to do that before because I was scared of losing people.
What's the worst relationship advice you've ever had or received?
I think when people say things like, let's just see how it goes. I think that, and it's interesting because I think if you're in a casual setup, then that's absolutely fine. That kind of makes sense.
Hmm.
But I think for people that are looking for more long-term serious relationships, oftentimes I find when people say, let's just see how it goes, it's people that have the avoidant kind of attachment style, where they don't really want to commit. They've got commitment issues, or they're just not serious. So I think, and of course this is not always the case, but I think oftentimes if people are like, let's just see how it goes, it often means that they are going to put no effort into this relationship, and you are going to be doing all the work. And as soon as you cause them any kind of distress, they'll be out the door. I mean, it's not always the case, but oftentimes.
If I want my marriage to last for 40, 50, 60, or maybe not 70 years because then I'll be 110, uh, what are the three key things that you'd want to advise me on in order to achieve that?
Keep working on yourself, and prioritize you where you can. Um, Communicate better, well, with your partner. Um, I suppose pick your battles.
Definitely pick my
Yeah.
battles,
Yeah.
as this week has proved.
Yes. Yeah, I think that's really, really key. There are times that we have to let things go, but letting things go doesn't necessarily mean that you have to hold on to the anger and the frustration. It can sometimes mean, if you've got like a trusted friend or family member, maybe sharing it with them, because you then get to offload, you get some, hopefully you get some positive feedback and some guidance, and then you don't then need to share that with your partner, because sometimes it's not them, sometimes it is us. We just won't tell them that bit. Because sometimes it's us, sometimes it's our own triggers, isn't it?
Of
So,
course it is,
yeah.
absolutely. Sometimes we know, like you said, it's a devil on the shoulder. You
Yeah.
know that really, do we need to poke the bear?
Yeah.
Yes.
But,
But why?
but that's a really good question as well, though, in terms of, but why? Because sometimes it's because we want to be close to our partner. Like, sometimes if you don't feel very connected to your partner, if you cause an argument, there's a sense of intimacy that's created there, because you're getting the attention that maybe you're not getting from them anyway. I think that's why I say it's important to know yourself, because if you know that that's what you need, you're able to then take a step back and say, you know what, babe, I think I was just kind of causing a bit of conflict there, but actually I feel quite disconnected from you. And actually, that's kind of what I'm really looking for. But you have to kind of do the work on yourself to really know what's going on for you.
I suppose it's knowing, isn't it? And it comes back to the passion, because there's passion in a fight of some
Yes.
description, but it's knowing when that's healthy, when it's not healthy.
Yeah, and I think for some people, they do really get a bit of a buzz from like having a relationship where there's just always fighting, there's always drama. It's like it does give you the attention that maybe sometimes you're seeking, and but it's toxic. And that's, you know, if it gets to that stage, that's when it needs to be addressed.
Thank you so much for today. It's
Oh,
been
you're
great to meet
welcome.
you.
Oh, you're very welcome. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, it's wonderful.
Yeah, thanks very
All
much.
good?
Loved it.
Amazing.
Oh, thank you. Great
Thank
conversation.
you. Yeah, it's great.